Oh, Larry's showing a new shirt.
I know it's an old one. I'm just folding them up. They've only been like that for about 5 months. Why
That's
did
right. Dan's got an old one too.
Yeah, I see you, Dan. Nice looking shirt, Dan.
Hey,
I need a
So
Federalist shirt.
I know it. 2 arms, 2 arms.
yeah.
Dan. Okay, let's go back to Miss Janice. Janice, anything you want to say about the nibs? We were talking about that earlier.
Not really. My preference, I used to be into broads, but I'm finding myself more liking mediums and fines. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave. I've got an important call coming in just a few minutes.
Okay, Dan.
Anyway,
Peace
I'm
out,
going to have
baby.
to, yeah. So it was good seeing everyone. And
Nice to see you, Janice.
hello. But
Take care.
maybe next time then. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. And we'll just give this ball over to Mr. Will. I think.
There, I had to get unmuted. Well, I got a couple of things. I wanted to ask Frank a question. Frank, have you noticed the increase in ink sales? People are gravitating towards the more washed out colors or the less saturated colors like Ferris Wheel Express and some, real translucent colored ink, I think is what I'm seeing more and more of on like YouTube videos, people ink swatching. Have you noticed that in sales?
Oh, sure. Ink is a staple, and you sell a lot of it. And I got 20 different brands of ink, so I do gravitate on making sure that I'm well stocked with that. And I just started carrying. Come on, Frank. The other Australian ink. Don't go there. The other Australian ink. They approached me because of Robert Oster. They knew about it and all. So I'm Van Diemen's. Apologies to Van Diemen's. Sorry, I forgot the name off the bat. So I just started carrying Van Diemen's ink last summer. They approached me, and I've been doing well with that. So I carry a few of their lines, and it's pretty hot. And people do like, the latest color, the flavor of the month when it comes to inks and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm up to 20 brands, and that does well. People like, glitter ink and sheen variation. And, I'm fine with that. I'll sell you all of that you want. Colorverse, that's what they're based on, and they do very well as well. My Frankly inks, from, they celebrate our anniversary. Bless you, Lennis. The Oster inks.
Thank you.
Good. So the Robert Oster, the Frankly inks celebrate Robert's and my anniversary together. Me being the first reseller for him in the U.S. So we do a Frankly. We haven't done one since the pandemic. I did the first 4 years that he had it. We did it. Frankly 5th was celebrating my 5th anniversary. It was his 4th year in business. This is my 8th year in business coming up now this summer. It's his 7th. So we're talking. Want to try and get another Frankly in maybe this year. Be the first one in a couple of years. And,
I've got all your Frankly inks so far.
I've done 4.
Yeah, I've got all of them in samples.
I even sell a pack as that. Yep, I do Frankly Blue, Frankly Scarlet, Frankly Green,
yep,
and Frankly 5th, which is my 5th anniversary. So the Frankly Blue is actually a very nice dark teal. The Frankly Scarlet is true scarlet red. The Frankly Green is a very nice dark green. And Frankly 5th is a sapphire, a bluish purple. And none of them have sheen, the fleck. That's the first thing I want because, I sell new basically, but I collect vintage, and most of my own personal collection is vintage. And you just can't put fleck inks into vintage pens. You just can't, and you should not. And I'm always telling people that. And nothing wrong with variation and stuff like that, which the inks have. but you should not be putting Fleck sheeny inks into
Right.
vintage because they weren't built for that.
Right. You know, in general, Frank, you're right. And when I get a vintage, my go-to ink is like a Waterman. You know, so I'll throw in one variety or another of Waterman, usually Waterman Black, because the pH is about right. It's what I know. Some people like Quinks, but the Waterman inks tend to be the most mild and generally accepted by all the people that I run across that do professional restoration. That's what they've recommended. So that's what I've stuck with, besides being a really good, affordable, well-behaving ink. And so, yeah, I don't need, I have never bought a shimmering ink ever. Why? I'm not a teenage girl, so I don't need glitter or anything. You know, some of the sheening inks, you mentioned Colorverse, their Stars and Stripes is about as far as I really want to go with anything. And it does have a nice little shimmer to it. Matter of fact, I bought mine from you.
Yes.
So, you know, I tried samples of it and I said, that's good enough to buy in a bottle, you know? You know, I'm probably not going to put that into like an old Conklin or an old Waterman, just because, you know, first, I don't want to risk it. But I will say I put, like earlier, I mentioned the Bad Black Moccasin for noodlers. I put those in Esterbrook's and had no problem with it. It's actually a good behaving ink. But yeah, my go-to is going to be something more like a Waterman, and it's going to be a mild, good behaving, time-tested, proven kind of ink. But yeah, so I'm not going to put garbage, you know, flaky crap, and it's going to gunk up my pens, especially not a vintage that you pay a good amount of money for. And I can't just order a replacement anything.
Sure. Very good. That's all.
I can hit on one more thing here. Stan mentioned this earlier. He talked about ebonite feeds. I like tinkering with these pens, but this is a Ahab with a ebonite feed. And Larry, you talk about pens that smell. Get you an Ahab.
Yep.
That'll fix you up. But what I did is
I got plenty of them. Plenty. Love them.
I put a Goulet stub nib in it, number 6 Yoho stub, and heat set it and tinkered with it. And I'm not pulling this nib out of this pen. It writes so darn wet and has a good line variation and keeps up real well. So I've tinkered this enough now and made it a keeper. So, you know, it seems like every time I take the nib out of something and mess with it, that nib has to be retuned or reheat set or, you know, something. But when I get them like this, I leave them alone and I'm just going to keep it just like that from here on out. So, you know, for $25 pen and a $15 nib, it works great. And they hold a lot of ink, and it is inked up with just about the last bit of my KWZ grapefruit there, Dan. So I'm gonna have to get another bottle on my radar soon.
Okay, who have we missed so far? Mike. Let's visit with Mike Green.
Very well. Yeah, I've really been enjoying listening to you guys talk. I mean, as you're talking, you notice I keep dashing away. Like I was looking at, okay, yeah, the Pelicans. Yes, I have a couple Pelicans here. I have an 800 and a 205. So you can see the 205 is a lot smaller than the 800. I have to admit, I personally prefer the 800. Although, you know, people get into this. Oh yeah, I like whatever, whatever. You know what? I pretty much like everything. I'm not I guess I'm just not very particular or something, because I love these. I love the 800. I just love the 800. This is a fine
pen, great size.
And it's a fine nib on this one. Actually, both of these are fine. When I for quite a while, I was a fine nib person. I like fine, medium. I'll go medium fine, really on an extreme. Oh, that's crazy talk, but now as time is going by, I'm getting into much broader things. And I think was it you, Lannis?
Right?
Yeah. But I write very different with a broad nib or whatever. I think Will had mentioned it. I got the Wicked Witch of the West and the Sailor pen in it with a zoom nib in it, just to try the zoom nib. I'm always off trying, experimenting. That's, again, I can't say that I really have found anything I don't like, although sometimes I'm just not very good at writing with something. It takes a while to learn how to write with a stub, for example, or I guess in this case, this was a zoom nib, and I have to admit that I finally just never really warmed to it. It was just way too wide for me. I mean, I could write posters with it or something, but I couldn't write a letter with it because it was just so broad. I'd have to, I get like, half a dozen lines on a page or something with it, because it just screamed, if I held it at the regular angle, it was super broad. Again, as you were mentioning, as you raise the angle, it would go finer and finer. And it was a very cool thing, but I just don't have the skill really to write with something like that very effectively. I think, again, like the flex nibs, they're really popular, and I played with a couple, but I just don't have the skill, the pressure control to really do a good job with it. But they're fun to play with, though. I definitely like to write letters with them and play with them. But for regular daily writing, I stick to pretty much the normals, the fine. Although now lately I've been going medium and broad. And actually with this one, I took it in, and I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see the detail of it, but it's of course a fairly big nib. So I had it ground into an architect, and so this is a really broad architect. I don't know. I didn't have him grind it down smaller, but it's a lot of fun to play with. But again, not a very practical daytime writing notes or writing a letter kind of thing. Fun to play with for like a short note or something, but definitely not an everyday writer, that you would use. But again, I got sailors, as you were going through, you were talking about things. Well, yeah, I got my Twisbys, I love my Twisbys. I guess I have to say I like a lot of things. I got these Twisby Goes, when I first got back into using pens, I got the Twisby Goes. They were pretty new at the time, and I got every size nib with them, just so I could go, oh, let's try a broad, let's try a stub, and they weren't very expensive, so I just got them that way, But I don't know. I guess I'm all over the place in terms of pens. I do like the ebonite. I do like the feel of the ebonite, but like this guy's the St. Louis pen, I guess from last year, I think it was. Nautilus. I bought this one from Frank. What? Okay, I'm sorry. Somebody said something, but it is a great pen too. I mean, I have a lot of really good pens. I've been, and as you guys have been talking about your pens, I keep, oh yeah, I've got this pen and that pen, and I grabbed several of them as you were talking and just was looking at them and going, yeah, I really appreciate these pens. So, in terms of nibs, I guess the only thing I would say that I've had trouble with is that I've bought pens now with just a stock nib, and now I've gotten to the point where I've been using tune nibs so much lately that I kind of become a bit of a snob about nibs. I guess I do like standard quote normal nibs. I can write with them and everything, but I'm starting to, maybe I'm developing a nib palette or something, but I'm starting to actually appreciate, nibs that, pens that have nibs that really behave well. So, I can pick up any of these pens and write with them and be just fine, writing a note, writing a letter or whatever. And I can adapt my handwriting to the broad one or a very fine one. But having it being tuned has been really, getting the right, characteristics. I don't have to slow down or speed up or worry about how it's going to handle how I write. I can just write and it'll keep up with me. I definitely like that. And I don't know. I guess I don't, is that enough? Any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
We're waving goodbye to Liz.
Oh, are we waving goodbye to Liz? Liz, did you?
Yeah, she had to go.
That wasn't
Oh,
any
she's gone
signal
already.
to you, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm oblivious. So I didn't realize she was leaving. Oh well.
Liz, if you're watching this later, we love you.
Oh yeah. I didn't hear anything from her, so.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
bother,
She
you know.
didn't get to speak.
She was on mute all night.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I saw she was on mute, and and her time was we lost her. Okay. Okay.
Have you got any nice blanks in, mister?
Oh gosh, I've got blanks. I got blanks out the wazoo here, you know, and I got some new pens. Did you want to see a new pen?
Sure.
If you're like me, it's like, oh yeah, I've got this. What did I call it? I called it a Matthew Blue Giraffe, right? Didn't I call it that? So I have a new Matthew Blue Giraffe.
Very cool. Very cool.
This one has a clip.
With the clip, yeah.
I added a clip to it, but it's basically the Matthew Blue Giraffe. And this one actually, this was a custom pen. We won't mention any names, will we? And it has you know, again, somebody wanted a gold nib, so there we are, gold nib. Again, you know.
Actually, that's Larry's giraffe pen built
Yeah,
to
this
my
is-
specification.
Okay.
My
All right, I'm sorry.
specifications, not
This is not a
anybody else.
Matthew.
Totally different.
Not,
Totally different.
not a Matthew Blue Giraffe. This is a Larry Blue Giraffe. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll go that way. Yeah, this is Larry's pen. So this will be on its way here pretty soon here, Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll
Must
be on
be a
its way probably Monday. It'll be on its way Monday. Oh, it's a secret? Shoot.
Yes.
Too late.
Yes.
Too
I
late.
think you let it out already.
All right, it's too late. All right. And I've got should I just keep throwing things, throwing things out that haven't been made public yet? Is that what you want? I've got another one.
Yeah.
Here we go. We'll go with
Hey,
this.
I can relate to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. We'll go to the next one. I just finished these two pens like last night, and so I'm just getting ready. They didn't make it out today. My post office in my little town here is only open for an hour on Saturday. So if you don't get in there during that hour, it's too late. You're done for the weekend, you know. But so these won't go out till Monday. Here is I guess we'd have to call this a Will honeycomb. All right.
Out of sight.
Nice.
Yeah, you haven't. Will hasn't seen this one yet. This is I just finished it. Here's
Yes,
your
I
pen.
am seeing
Very
it.
cool. Honeycomb there.
Okay.
It's gorgeous.
Okay. So this is and it has the yellow ebonite
Is there a
section here.
bicolored nib?
This is a bicolor Bach medium, as I recall. All right. And I know, Will, you were talking about, I guess the last time we were hanging out, you were asking if a Bach and a Yovo nib can be swapped. The nib units are not, they have different threading and they are not compatible with each other. So you're stuck with whatever the pen was made for, right? And so
Right.
I heard you talking about that and I went, well, fine. So I made you another section.
Excellent. Excellent.
So this one is Bach and this one's Yovo. So
You
So
are
you'll
my
be-
hero, sir. You are
So
my
that'll be
hero. Thank
that will
you.
be
And
coming
Will
to
will
you.
have to take both of them.
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
well, yeah, I mean, it only makes sense, but I mean, then you'll be able to swap nibs on this pen to your heart's content. So it'll take any number
Oh.
6.
Well,
That's
you know,
very
talk,
that's very thoughtful, Mike. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah.
you
So
know,
I hope you enjoy
talking
that.
nibs though.
I'm excited. That is a gorgeous pen. I'm
Well,
excited.
talking-
I love it.
Mike,
ahead.
which do you prefer working with? And that's one discussion we haven't had since we were supposed to be talking about
Oh,
nibs versus
Okay.
Yovo. How about from a pen maker's perspective?
Well, I only do 3 nibs right now. I mean, there's so many, as you're aware, I mean, there's so many nibs and people were talking about swapping things around, swapping feeds and swapping nibs. And there's so many different things you could do, but I've been so far, I mean, and it's just because that's what's readily available. I've been doing the Yovo number 6, the Bach number 6, and the Bach number 8, and all 3 of them are, when I first started making pens, all of them were a challenge. But now I've gotten to the point where I can handle them now. So I don't have any problems with any of them. They're all very easy for me to deal with. The section is probably the hardest part of the pen to make because it's so thin and it has threading, and the threading for the nib unit is down inside the part, so you have to cut the interior to the right sizes, and it's tapered, and then you have to get that thread down there at the bottom of it at the end. And I had, that was a lot of challenge on my very first pens. I had a lot of challenge getting the nib unit to actually thread in reasonably and all that, but I won't, I'll knock on wood here. I've gotten to the point now where I'll do these and it'll be done and right the first time.
Right.
And I have gone through, and sometimes I'll tune them a little bit more. I think Stan was talking about at one point. I do countersink the end of it. If you're familiar with them, they've got a little collar on the end of them. And again, I'm not sure if this is going to show up very well on video on the camera here, but if I thread it out a little bit, you probably can't see it. But there's a little bit of a collar on the end of the on the end of the nib unit.
Right.
This is a Yovo here, but there's a little teeny collar, and a lot of people will just let that sit on the end of the section.
Right.
And I like to countersink it so that it'll go in, and the two parts will be relatively flush. Like, they're not always exactly flush, but you want them to be somewhat flush, And so I've gotten to the point where I can nail that pretty much the first time. Sometimes I have to come in and adjust things a little bit. But
Mike, have you run across any quality control issues with one or the other? And the reason I'm asking, I was talking with a pen manufacturer, Kilk pens.
Okay.
And they're out of Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. But
I can't go to. Oh shoot, I've lost the name. The leather company. Every time I buy something from them, Galen Leather. Every time I go to Galen Leather, I have to admit, I'm humming that song every time I go to his.
They might be giants, Then again, they might not.
Be giants. They might not. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going. Talk about
so,
go ahead.
But they were telling me that they were having a problem because they were getting all their nibs. They had a problem getting them supplied the way they wanted them with Yovo, so they went with Bach. And they were telling me that they were having like 4% of their nibs they had to throw away because of quality control problems where they just could not get them to work right. I know that you've been having your Bach nibs tuned for the most part by Kirk Spear, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I'm just curious if anybody else was running across the same kind of quality control issue with Bach nibs that they were running across, because he said it gets expensive when you start throwing away 4 out of every 100 nibs or 10 out of every 100 nibs depending upon the production run. It gets expensive. And I've got my personal preferences as one to the other as a user, but I was just curious as to people who actually use them for their product. Right.
Okay, well, first of all, I've only been doing this for a couple of years, so I haven't, so I don't have a long history, but I've heard, again, talking to other people that make things, that out of the box that Yovo nibs, standard nibs, were usually better tuned than the Bach ones were. But also I've heard people say that Bach has really improved their quality lately, But then again, at the same time, what was it, about a year ago, Yovo was having trouble with their nib unit, their housings rather, and they were leaking. And I've had a couple leaked nibs, that popped
I've had
up.
them break. I've had their housings break on me, and because I got some from Jim Hines, and they were giving me a hassle, and I literally snapped the feed trying to get their housing out because their housing was giving me a problem. So
they had some problems with their housings, say a year ago, whatever, and it's one of those things. I'm sure their process changed or something. Maybe they were whatever they were doing different, and it slipped through. And there were a lot of makers that were saying, I am never going to use their nibs again. There were people that were really mad about it, because part of it was that the manufacturer Yovo, they just they're in Germany, as you alluded, and they just didn't react very well. Okay, they didn't respond they were kind of like, whatever, corporate talk kind of thing, but very unresponsive. And I'm trying to think of the fellow's name. Golly, one of the U.S. guy, one of their main distributors. He basically stepped up and said, I'll take care of it no matter what, which was good. I wish I could say what his name was. Boy, anyway, but you all know, somebody will know who I'm talking about. But I personally had just some minor problems, but some people were having a lot of trouble with the packaging leaking. You know, the housing leaking on them, and you know, people get all emotional and get really upset about it. But as you alluded to, I basically said when I first got into this, I would screen the nibs, and I had a little box of them. You know, this one's kind of scratchy, and I'd look at the something's not quite right or whatever. And I always like to test things before I send them out. You know, usually I'll do like a little letter with that pen and that nib all assembled just to try it, make sure there's nothing really wrong. You know, and I would do that. And I go, wow, this, you know, whatever, this nib is not good. I'd set it in a bin, and I would kind of screen that way. And I wasn't having a huge failure rate, but it was a noticeable failure rate. And I don't think both of them were having problems at that level. And they were mainly things that I'm sure were easily tunable, but I was not a nib tuner. And I had the idea of, oh yeah, I'll get into nib tuning like you're doing, you know, someday, right? No, I've never gotten into it. I've taken a class. I took a class from Ralph Reyes, right? Is that right? The way you say his name. Anyway, took a class at one of the shows, and I think right after I took that class, although the class was a lot of fun, I then said, okay, I think I'm going to have Kirk tune my nibs now, and then I can just not worry about it. And that has really diffused that whole situation. I can't say that I even try the nibs now. I just get them tuned just offhand. So, and that has, you know, again, like I said, I'm kind of spoiled now with nibs. I like tuned nibs a lot, you know, and I did get a couple of pens that I bought that had standard nibs, and I got it out of the box. I was like, yeah, these are like okay, and I can write with them, but
yeah,
gee, I'm sure you know what I mean. You know, you get a nib, and it's like,
oh yeah,
I can write with it. It's a writable nib. It's not misbehaving in any gross way, but man, I sure like this other. And I swapped nibs out of them. I stood them out, and I set them aside. Maybe I'll have them tuned someday or something. But they were not bad nibs, you know.
Yeah, I get out my loop in my smoothing kit a lot, and
yeah.
you know, and it's, but like you, I'll get a nib and I'll go, it writes okay, you know, and okay, let's get it under a loop. Let's look at it. Okay, it's aligned, but it's not perfect. You know, it's acceptable, but not perfect. And even when I'm doing those in some of my videos, I'll even say that it writes good, but it could be better. And and usually by the time I produce the video, I've actually sat and smoothed it a little bit, and I'll even put that up on the, you know, as I'm producing it. You know, after recording this, I did some smoothing, and now it's much better. And it doesn't take a lot. You know, I did a video on nib smoothing, and I'd already learned some by watching a few other people. I'd looked a couple other guys online and seen what they did, and I'd played with it myself, and I took a little bit of here, a little bit from there. I got a few tips from somewhere else, had my own method, and then I took Richard Binder's class at a pen show. And showed me a few more things. And besides Richard Binder, you had Mike and it was Linda from Indie Pen Dance was you know, there, and also the guy from Brian from, oh good grief, he does the Menlo, Edison, Brian from Edison. He was another one of the instructors. So they had, you know, 3 instructors running the class and doing the practical with you. And you know, they shared some of their techniques, and they helped me polish the technique that I was already using, so I got a little better at it. And heck, I even sent Larry some of the pens that we used in that class that were they purposely had sabotaged the nib, and it was your job to go make it right. And that one from that class, I sent Larry. I said, "Here, buddy, try this one and see what you think." And because I thought, hey, it was a cheap pen, but doggone, this writes good. So, and I found that I could take any pen for the most part. Most pens that I get that just aren't quite it. They're good, they're acceptable, but it could be better. And spend 2 to 5 minutes. And suddenly it's like, much better.
And sometimes this is very subjective too. Like maybe you like a pen
Yep.
that, maybe you like something that's really smooth. I guess I'll pick on Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc tends to make very, very smooth. Some people will say they over polish their nibs because they want it to be really smooth, right? At least that's what I've heard. I don't own any, but and again, that is, if that's what you like. If you like a really smooth writer without a lot of feedback, I'm not even talking scratchy, but just a feedback kind of feel. You can get that. If you want feedback, you can get feedback. You can change the nib. And so a lot of this may be just getting it to your personal taste and not right or wrong, if you will, right? And I looked while we were talking here. It was a Ralph Reyes. It was at the Chicago Pen Show. He brought, as you said, I took a class from him, and I left my poor wife at the booth, and it was like a 2-hour class. I said, "Oh, I'll be back, honey, in 2 hours." Oh, was that a lie? Ralph had a pile of, he gave us each a Jinhao, a little cheap, inexpensive Jinhao that he said he used. It used to be, as you were saying, years ago, he would buy a box of these for a class like this, and he didn't have to do much. They were already sabotaged, and and now he has to actually, he said when he bought them, they were all actually pretty nice, and he had to sabotage them for the class. And so we tuned it and went through it. I think the class ended up, Ralph would go, "Okay, like we were toward the end of the time." He says, "Well, if you guys are still interested, we can keep going." And we all were going, "Yes, keep going, keep going." I think it ended up being 4 hours before I was done. But at the end, that little $2 pen, it wrote gorgeous. It was just gorgeous. So, but at the same time, in the same breath, I'm not gonna take this guy and go, "I think I'm gonna start playing with this,"
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take my Pelican 800 and go, let's smooth it up a bit, or let's do whatever. I'm just too chicken, I guess. I don't throw myself into that. So I would, if I had a problem, or if I had something I really want to change, well, like I did a grind on this guy, but I mean this on my Wicked Witch of the West. But I definitely wouldn't do a grind. But I don't think I'd even try tuning. I'm just not ready for that yet.
I'm definitely not ready for grinding.
Yeah.
The only time I've tried grinding a pen is when I have bought like a vintage nib or a pen with a vintage nib, and instead of being the two tines are being like this, they show up like this because part of it snapped off.
Oh yeah.
So I get out my my little handheld grinder, set it up on my desk, and then just grind it right across and make it into a stubby stub, as I call it. And then smooth it out a little bit so it's writable, because I don't feel like tracking down another number 2 Waterman nib or something like that. I'm just going to grind it just to make it usable, because I got so ticked off that somebody didn't tell me it had a broken nib tine. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have not really, other than in that class, I have not gone off and tried the smoothing that you're doing. I watch you doing your videos, and I watch it, and it just, I think I would do it, just for experiment. Like, if I get of course, now I've kind of cheated. Now I don't see many bad nibs to play with anymore now, since I'm having someone else do all the work. But
that's what cheap pens are for, though, man. You get some cheap Chinese ones that you go, it's acceptable, or it's scratchy as heck. And then you just play with it, and that's all I did at first. Is I took some like a Jinhao 400 or 450, something like that, and I played with it, and I just said I can make it better, but I'm not going to try it on an expensive pen. Start cheap, and once you get confident with it, you can do it on something a little better. Once you do a bunch of them, you go, yeah, now I'm feeling a little more confident that I'm not going to totally foobar something that I own, especially something that I've got a lot of money invested into it.
So I haven't really played much with nibs at that level, but I mean, just as a user, I buy nibs by I buy boxes of them, and I'm not that big of a maker. But I do make I go through a fair number of nibs, and I really haven't had any really bad ones. I did buy one, and I can't remember the manufacturer. it was a number 8 steel nib, and it was like, again, I hate to say anybody's name, but it was abysmal. I mean, it was just a terrible nib. I sent it out. It was when you look at a nib, again, I'm sorry for the picture here, but if you look at the nib, the feed and the nib, how they're put together. Well, the nib and the feed were like this. I got my hands in the picture here. Instead of being like this, they were like this. They were twisted relative. They weren't even lined up with each other. And I opened up the box and it was like, they were like nowhere near being together. You talk about like forming a nib and getting it really finely tuned together. Well, this was a plastic feed, of course, but it was like this. And I should have just put it right back in the box and sent it back. But I should have just thrown it away. But I've tried putting it mechanically together correctly. It still didn't write well. So I sent it off to Kirk to have him look at it. He basically said, this is unrecoverable, So it really was that bad. But that's about the only time I've really gotten a really bad nib. It didn't get put into a pen, but it was an experiment I wanted to try, but it didn't work out very well for me. But,
Mike, have you ever, are you going to be carrying ever any of his other unusual grinds, like his architects or anything like that?
I did. Right. I bought about a collection of about a half dozen or so various ones. Just ones that I thought, quote, the public would be interested in, i.e. what was Mike interested in? And I went and bought about a half dozen of his grinds. I bought an architect, a reverse architect, a cursive italic. I've got here a, let's see, I think in this pen, it's an imperial, okay? One of his imperial grinds, which is one of his specific grinds. And I've got an oblique nib in this pen. You can't see the nibs. I'm sorry, I'm just waving around. I've got an oblique nib in this pen. So I've played with them, but I bought about a half dozen of them, and I did show them on my Instagram. Didn't really have a lot of interest in them, but at the I'm trying to remember which show. I don't know if it was the Dallas show last year. I think it was the Dallas show last year. Just for fun, I just took and put those nibs into a couple of my pens and inked them up and set them out for people to try. And people, of course, then proceeded to buy them, because they go, wow, an architect, or whatever, they hadn't seen. And when you're at a show, if you haven't planned ahead, again, if you're ever in that position, if you really want to do these kind of things, you need to plan ahead and get your spot, reserve your spot with the nib grinder, nib person, whoever they are, because they tend to get booked up.
Yes,
and
they do.
It's like in this case, I cheated. Here I had this architect, and the person had never even seen one before, never even tried it. And here it was, they tried it, and they were like, wow, I love this. And then they came back a little while later. Of course, they couldn't get anybody to make an architect for them because everybody was booked up. So they bought the architect nib, even though it wasn't tuned to them and anything like that, like it would be in the.
Do you have any now? Do you have any now?
Oh, yeah. Actually, well, these two here. Oh, you mean architects? These two nibs here that I have right here are his nibs. These are out of that 6. Like I said, this one is an oblique, and the other one was an imperial. Those were some of the nibs so I've been playing with them. I put them in these pens just to try them, actually, because a couple of them, I've got a needle point. I don't remember what else I have. I have several different nibs that I just bought just to have some on hand.
I'll have to get together with you. I might want to pick up a couple.
Not to plug one of your competitors, Mike, because I don't want to.
That's fine. That's fine.
The other thing is because I consider them to be overrated. But one of the things that Franklin Christoph does at their table, I mean, and they got a good amount of space, but they have a bunch of pens they always have set out with all kinds of different grinds. So that is one thing that is worth your time if you can get in, depending upon the pen show, whether it's really busy or not, whether you can even get your butt in one of the seats to play with anything. I'm not going to badmouth them, and I'm not going to promote them. I'm kind of agnostic. I'm agnostic for the most part.
I'm trying to remember. I have a couple of their pens. I like their pens. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one of their. Yeah, I've got several of their pens. I've got no complaints about them at all.
It was a bottle 19. I had to go. I got my little cheat sheet here, but I love that pen. I love that pen.
I've got several, and I like them. I don't understand the fanaticism that some people have towards them. I'll never understand it. They're almost cult-like following with some people. But you know, I've got an SIG nib that they put out.
Okay.
And you know, the SIG nib is decent, but you can always try some of the, you know, you were talking about like an oblique nib. You know, I found that I kind of like a little slightly left oblique nib on an old vintage pen, and sometimes, and if you're into that, if at a pen show and you find vendors like that you can try them out.
And I know, and not just them, like Kirk, you know, again, I'll plug Kirk, you know,
sure,
Kirk, Pen Realm, you know, I don't really get any payback on, I should get a discount. I should talk to him, but
no, I like Kirk.
You know, I like Kirk, and he's a great guy. He has a sample of all of his nibs too, and I imagine all of them do. He has a set of pens with all sorts of different grinds, and so you can walk up and try them. And again, like you were saying, if he's being mobbed, it's going to be hard to get in to try them. But they all, and I would probably say a lot of them have a set of pens like that you can try, but it's just a matter of finding a spot where you can get in and do it. So we have Larry, are we running out of time? Were you trying to signal? Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to signal I was running out of time. What's that?
Just in case there's a vampire on here right now. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. I thought we were trying to get a message from our sponsor. But I can't. Go ahead.
If Nibmeister is booked up, you can always leave the pen with them. Just show them how you hold it, and that's it.
Right.
Yep. And you can also get on. You know, you can just and what I do is I'll send big. You know, of course, I'm not doing anything really specific. I'm just taking I have a box of nibs and I'm sending them off to Kirk, so I know that you can go on. He has an order form that you can walk through, and I'm sure all of them do. I'm not trying to just plug this one guy, but you know, he has an order form where you can go on and say, "Here's my pen. Here's what I want you to do." Da 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 da. And his order form is pretty thorough about asking questions. And again, you could go, as you said, you could talk to them at the show and drop a nib off or drop a pen off and have them do it and send it back to you. Especially if you're asking for something really complicated. You know, usually you only have like a 30-minute slot. And if it's something that they're really swamped and they're all booked up, they can't get it done for you at the show, they'll all accept a pen and mail it to you afterwards and do it. That's another way to do it. And again, and I'm also speaking to the people that, you know, if you can't make it to a pen show, which a lot of people can't, you can always talk to them, email them, or contact them, and go through their order process and work it out with all of them as well.
Right. Well, putting another plug for Kirk, for those of you who have never gone to his site, he occasionally has vintage pens as well as some newer pens as well for sale. That some of them are used, some of them are new. I've bought from him several times in the past. I will say I bought an old Wall Eversharp from him, and it was like a fourth of the price I've seen some people gouging for online. And I actually got a fairly decent pen from him, a vintage pen. The price was right, so I just jumped at it because I've seen what they're going for elsewhere. And I can't complain. You know, Kirk's been good to deal with. I see him at shows all the time, and he's always been pleasant.
Yeah, and also I think, in my understanding, I've never bought a pen from Kirk, but but I bought them. But my understanding is also, like in that case, say for me, I'm not a big vintage person, and I don't know much about vintage. Oh, are we losing somebody?
Yeah, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan. We'll catch up later, but so I'm kind of a little afraid of vintage pens to some degree because I'm just very ignorant of them. And if I were to go someplace and just buy one, like you were talking about, just get one on whatever, you know, I would get it, and maybe it would need some work and maybe not, or whatever.
My first look, when I first was into the pen hobby, my first vintage pen purchase was horrible. You know, I ordered a lever filler. It was an Imperial, not a Schaefer Imperial, but Imperial brand. Okay. But that's how I learned to change an ink sac, because it was all crusted. It was like, this pen's totally useless to me. And like, what the heck? And so I started to do some research, and I ran across Richard Binder's website, and he had a page, and not a video, not a demonstration, really, just a narration of in print of how to change an exact. And he pegged it at beginner. So, okay, fine. So I didn't know how to properly measure what sack I needed. I just ordered some stuff and I figured it out. And then I did it again, the same pen, and I still couldn't get it to write. I still can't figure out how to get it apart to get any gunk out of it. So I tore it apart again, and then I tore it apart again. And I went through several sacks just learning how to do it until I felt, and then I started to order Esterbrooks, and I started to play with Esterbrooks and started restoring Esterbrooks because they were inexpensive until I can do it with my eyes closed now. And there are others that I haven't learned yet. Lever fillers I got, man. If it's a lever filler or an aerometric with a sack, I got that, man. Not a problem. But I get all kinds of vintage stuff. And a lot of it depends on who you get it from. If you get it off eBay, you better figure you're probably going to have to do something with it. You might as well make that assumption going in that I'm going to have to work on it. There are some guys, though, like if you know them and you've got a relationship with them and you get discount codes. I buy a lot from several different vendors out there. I mentioned Independence. I got this little Conklin, and it's a lot smaller than I thought it was on their website looking at it, but a little Conklin Endura. It was restored. I know Mike and Linda, so I know that they're going to do quality, and I know who trained them. So I know they're going to be top quality, and I know that I'm not going to have to monkey with it. Okay, but I saw a Conklin Endura. I already know I like Conklin Enduras, and when they had the lapis lazuli, I said sold. And I've bought from them, some oversized Schaefer balance, for instance, with a factory stub nib on it. I was like, yeah, all right, Mike and Linda are selling that. I know that I can trust that. This is another one I bought just recently. I don't know why I'm buying small pens lately, because I'm not much into small pens, but I like ones that are a little different. Here's one that I bought recently that I just ran out of ink and I got to refill it. I meant to do a video on it, but I haven't. And I'll tell you what's really different about that. That's an Eisenstadt. And I'm trying to remember if they were out of Boston. I'm just going to the top of my mind. But, it's a decent little pen. I kind of liked it. It's got a tiny little, number 2 nib on it.
Is that a hard rubber pen, Troy?
Yeah, it is. It is it's not really a chased hard rubber, but it is a black hard rubber. What's interesting about this one, look at the lever on that. And anybody who knows lever fillers, I'll tell you what, let me compare that to this lever on this Conklin. Maybe you can see the difference.
Yeah,
it's reversed.
Yes.
Eisenstadt was doing reversed on their levers. And the reason, and this one's a little loose. I mean, it's over 100 years old. So, I mean, I understand that. But when you go to put it in a pocket, if that little lever was sticking out a little bit, you got a businessman putting it in his pocket, that lever would catch on his pocket and it would express ink out of it. So that was done in reverse. So they got the lever going this way. From experience, I found, though, sticking it down into a bottle of ink and then trying to lift that lever up, it's a little harder to try to fill it. And because I got my big old mitts trying to, stick it into a bottle of Waterman Black and then trying to lift it up, man, that's a pain in the butt. And maybe if it was a full-size pen rather than like a vest size, it wouldn't be so bad. But I'd never written or seen an Eisenstadt, So when I found that for sale, one day as I was looking through someone's old listings that had been sitting there for like 6-8 months, no one had purchased this from like Antique Digger. And I've known Greg for years. I first met him at a Raleigh show, and he had he wasn't showing anything, he wasn't selling anything, but he just had this great big old book or folder full of pens. And we just got to talking, and he handed me one of his cards, and we got along great. And so I've been buying for him for years. And he tends to get every once in a while something a little different. So I like to buy the ones that are just a little different than your norm. And that's what piques my curiosity on a lot of these vintage, because it's different. And I've bought some from other vendors who they're just an oddball. You don't see every once in all the time. They're not your common ones. Some syringe fillers that are, a built-in syringe filler from like 1905 once for like $100. I was like, okay, cool. And I did a video on it. I mean, it's kind of neat. It's like like an old Ahab kind of thing, or some of those old noodlers where you pull back that syringe and it's built into it. So every once in a while you can find some decent stuff. And if you don't know how to change an ink sac, it's really easy to learn. There's a friend of mine who's been on one of Larry's calls down in Miami who just watched my video a couple of times, and he's changing them now. He learned how to do it, and he's like, yes, I got it done. I said, great. Hey, you're an old pro now. No, I'm not an old pro. Yeah, you are, man. You got it down. You did 2 of them. You're good. Now that you know how to do that, you should feel more comfortable about buying. And we talked about, maybe you'll eventually learn how to knock out a nib. And I had to learn how to do that too. And I had to get the right tools to do it. And I tried using my own. I took a block of wood and drilled holes through it and was trying to knock crap out that way. It didn't work quite as well. I could do it, but that's when I just decided, all right, I'm going to invest a little bit of money and buy like a knockout block.
Yeah.
It's a little more of that. This shouldn't cost no $45 from Pendragons over in England, but it's $45. I went ahead and got it anyway, because look how many pen sizes I can monkey with without having to drill holes through a 2x4 in every size that I need. And, little things like that make my life a lot easier. So, but yeah, man, don't be afraid of vintage, buddy. You can do it.
I will
if you can put,
it's fun to collect. It's fun to use. It's fun to repair vintage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one. I bought on eBay. All it needed is to repair the crack on the cap. Great.
Well, the thing is too, if you don't know how, there are people out there who do.
Oh yeah.
And some pens are not expensive. Like you can get a lever filler restored for $45 to $100, and that's fairly cheap, man. That's not bad at all. And then they go up from there, like up to $75 for like a snorkel kind of thing. And I don't know how to do snorkels yet. I probably should, but I haven't had the gumption or the real interest to do it, even though I've got some that need some repair. I got some vac fillers. I took a class from Ron Zorn once from Main Street Pens that he did at the Raleigh Pen Show. I had no idea. It was a vintage pen repair. Okay. Well, he was going over vac fillers, Parker Vacuumatics. I didn't have one. So I couldn't relate to a lot of what he was saying yet at that point. I've seen them, but I didn't own one. Well, now I've got 2 of them that I need to have repaired. I'm going to send those off because I don't have the chops for it just yet. And I haven't figured it out quite yet. So I'm probably going to send those off. I've just not decided that it was so worth the money at the moment, because I got 500 other pens sitting here. So,
no,
there is a tool that somebody's selling on eBay that allows you to remove the vacuumatic part from the Parkers.
Right. And I just haven't gotten into it. I know there's some guys some of these guys have made their own.
Yeah.
And I think Ron was telling us that he made one up, and there's a guy, pentooling.com. He's at all the shows. Frank, you know what I'm talking about. I know, apparently he sells whatever tool that Ron started invented for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, at pen shows you can find everything you need for it. But once you got the basic supplies on lever fillers, especially, man, those are easy.
Yeah, lever fillers are fun to do, Esterbrook and all. Yeah, great pens to learn how to repair a vintage on. Like Troy said, I'll do levers, I'll do TD, shaper TDs, I'll do button fillers. Vax, and especially the Shaver Vax pneumatics and all, I'll send out.
Right.
I'll have Ron do them from time to time. Ron
Yeah.
Ron doesn't do too many shows anymore. I'll give him the independent.
Right. I haven't seen him around much lately.
He hasn't been doing shows lately, but yeah, vintage is fun. Like Troy said, recommend that you try it. You try vintage, you'll get spoiled with using vintage pens.
And you mentioned button fillers. I mean, button fillers are nothing more than a lever filler. Just you press down from the back, and it actually it just has a flexible. All it is a flexible rod, or instead of a little piece of metal being on a lever that goes down, it's just a flexible piece of metal that goes from the section to the button, and it just flexes a piece to do the exact same thing. I did one, and it was an Arnold button filler. And I'll be honest with you, that Arnold is just every bit as good as the Parker that I've got. But I tinkered with it. I was like, how the heck do I do? I pulled it apart and pieces fell out. I was like,
that's all there is to it. Yeah.
I don't know how to do this yet. Let me ask somebody real quick. Hey, does this just go from here to there, and it just sticks again? It just pushes against here, and you just stick it under the. Is that all there is to it? He's like, yeah, dude, that's it. Like, okay, cool, done. That's all.
Yep, it goes in there and pushes down. Yep, that's it.
Yep.
The guy I use for repairs is Rick. His website is the Southern Scribe. He does it full time. He does excellent work and pretty quick and inexpensive. Like Troy said, $45 plus shipping, 15.
Right. And I mean, Independence does great work. Ron does good work. The guy I buy from, Greg Chic at Antique Digger. And plus you can use my discount code when you're purchasing restoration. So you get 10% off there. You know who, believe it or not, Larry, I think you've talked to him. You've talked to a young guy out in California.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I can't think of his name though.
Good. He's one of my pen pals. We just haven't written so long here recently. Good grief. I'll think of it here in just a minute. You can tell I'm in my 50s because I.
Talking about Adam.
No, that's not his name. I could probably look in this little Aiden Chow.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Aiden. Yeah, that's what it is.
Aiden, the artist? No. I know. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Aiden was one of those guys who, believe it or not, he's only, when I first started talking to him, he was only 15.
Yeah.
He's now probably 17 or so. And he's from a company or a family that owns their own company. So he's always been kind of business minded and working with his family. And he actually learned, you know how he started to do restorations? He saw my video on doing lever fillers. And so he started to hit me up about stuff, and I turned him on to a few other people to talk to. So he learned a little bit here, learned a little bit there, got them, played with them, got good at it. So now he does restorations, and he's made a nice little business. The kid's still in high school, and he's actually made a good business where he's starting to buy pens that are 4 figures for his own collection, because he'll get pens, he'll fix them up, sell them, and some high-end ones too. So this kid and I have a lot in common outside the pen hobby too. So we have some stuff to write about and talk about. But there's a younger generation coming in that has a respect for the history of some of these pens, the feel of them, and the especially American pens is what he's really into. A lot of the older American pens, the old Parkers, the old Watermans, those are the old Schaeffers. Those are the ones that really turn him on, and because he appreciates the Americana, the feel, and how he can relate to just the history.
Right. And I think you were mentioning earlier.
Matthew's going to bed. See you later.
Oh, good night. I was going to mention. You also mentioned earlier. Good night, Matthew. Yeah. You're also. I was going to mention that part of my curiosity really is driven by, you were mentioning the back in that era. These are like glorious pens. These are pens that write really well. This was in their heyday, as you might say. And so I'm curious about experiencing some of these pens. I'd like to try some. You know, again, we're back into what kind of pen do you like to work with? What kind of nib do you want to try? You know, that kind of stuff.
One of my all-time favorites right there,
Doric.
a Wall Eversharp Deco Band from the late 1920s, early 1930s. This actually was in Cliff Harrington's estate. For those of you who knew Cliff, I loved Cliff. I enjoyed talking to Cliff at pen shows. We had a lot in common in some areas outside of the pen hobby. So we stood there and talked for quite a while in some of the same industry. And, you know, and I bought from Cliff at shows. And this one, Mike Daigle sold this one to me because Mike ended up with Cliff's estate of pens to sell off. And I bought two out of Cliff's estate from Mike, both of them Wall Eversharp Deco bands. This was one that it was not restored. So I had to tear it apart. And because at first it didn't write real well. The sack was still pliable, but it wrote horrible. So I said, okay, I know how to play with these. I mean, I know how to knock a nib out. So I pulled it apart, cleaned it all up, put a new sack on it. And this, to me, is one of the best performing pens in my entire collection. And this may very well have become my favorite pen of all time that's in my collection. Is just an old Wall Eversharp Deco Band. And it almost has, you probably can't see it, and I'm not used to holding up to in front of my laptop, but it almost has kind of an angle on that nib. So it's, you know, it's kind of got a slant, just a little bit of a slant. And it writes really well. My handwriting is not as good as it is like with a 1.1 stub, but this writes so fantastically well and buttery smooth. And it just performs really, really well, where I do believe this 1929 or circa 1929 pen may just be my favorite pen in my whole collection, just because of how well it writes. And like I said, it sucked when I first got it, but now it performs so well. It's like, wow. You know, that era to me is just wowed me. The 1920s, the Schaefer flat tops that I've got are just gorgeous. And I just love that era. The red hard rubber, red rippled stuff I've got from Waterman is just gorgeous. On my desk is always this blue and olive Waterman 67, I think that's a number off the top of my head, but this is always on my desk at all times. So just that era, 1920s, you use the term glorious, and it is. I mean, that was their heyday, in my humble opinion.
20s to the 40s, yep.
Absolutely.
20s and 30s, yep, definitely. That's a blue ripple. That's an awesome pen, Dre. Yeah,
it is. And that's another one I got from Greg at Antique Digger, and I didn't have anything in blue ripple. I've got red. I don't have anything cardinal. I'm still searching for a bargain or a decent price on something cardinal.
Yeah.
I've got a 58 in red hard rubber that red ripple. I saw them at the DC show one time. I fell in love with them. I said, that's gorgeous. That's going to be my next Grail pen. And I managed to pick one up. Believe it or not, though, you know, it's got like a big old number 8 flexible nib on it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the next one I bought. I bought another Waterman 58 in very well worn black chased hard rubber. And the chasing is almost gone. It's that old, but it had a manifold number 8 nib on it. I was like, oh, I love this. You know, I bought a 55 in a manifold nib. It was the first manifold I ever bought. And I bought that. The guy had it at the Raleigh Pen Show. And I was like, this is cool. I saw him a couple months later in DC. He still had it. And I said, I'm glad you got that, because I've got cash in my pocket, because I wasn't prepared to buy it in Raleigh. I'm glad you still have it. Matter of fact, Alan, trying to remember, older guy, Alan from the Cary, North Carolina area. I'll remember his last name eventually, but he's like a mainstay at Raleigh and DC. You see him all the time. And so I bought it off from him, and it was like the last purchase I made at that DC show. I was on my way out the door, just about. My wife was waiting in the lobby with Matthew, waiting on me, and I just, oh, you still got it. So, and hey, here's the money. Gimme. And that Waterman 55 and the manifold nib. I prefer manifold to flex nibs. That's just a personal opinion. You know, some people love flex nibs, and I get it. Like Mike, you were saying, they're fun to play with, and I enjoy playing with them. It not for everyday writing, not for me for every day, but they're fun to play with. If you got that little folly mood going on, they're great. You know, you whip them out, you play with them. It's like, yeah, that was cool. But I'm not going to go write a letter to a pen pal probably with that.
Right.
But you know, the manifold nibs that I found, I've got a number 2 manifold nib, a 5 and an 8 on Waterman pens, and they're like, yeah, that's it. They're buttery smooth, they're stiff, but boy, they are smooth writing pens. So
Very good.
You know, it's
Very
a good segue.
All right, folks, we're gonna
Yeah,
go
Larry,
ahead, Frank.
we gotta
Go
cut
ahead,
it.
Frank.
We gotta cut it.
Go ahead, we're fixing
No, I was gonna say
to
it's
go
a
ahead.
good segue because people walk by my tables and they're like, "You sell vintage? You know, you have pen parts?" It's like, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, that's what I did before I even dreamed of the fact that I was going to become a pen dealer. You know, I was
Right.
full time. I bought and sold vintage on pen forums and online on eBay and all, and I was doing the local Philly pen show for years. Stan knows I would be at the Philadelphia Pen Collectors table. I would sell my vintage there in return for manning the table all weekend, you know, and by 2013, 2014, I wasn't teaching full time anymore. And I was like, you know what, I think I could do this. I could, you know, sell, you know, I could do retail. I could sell new. So that's the story there. And most of you
Voice coming out right now. Is it okay now? You better? Is it breaking up? What?
Our sound.
Sounds not good.
Sounds kind of bad.
Yes, kind of bad.
Kinda
Huh?
bad.
Thank you, Mike. That positive.
No, that's
Okay,
I'm teasing.
Mike, what we may do is if you have time tomorrow, we can jump online and I can
Sure.
deal with the audio settings and see if I can fix it.
Yeah. Strangely, you're doing much better, but Larry is breaking up pretty badly,
Yeah, that's actually true.
which is kind of strange. At first, I was blaming your network, but it may not be that. It may be something else you're doing. But yeah, we can do it tomorrow. Yeah.
But don't forget
Sit down and just
tomorrow
do it.
at 11 o'clock. We're doing Nino tomorrow at 11.
Nina Marie.
Yeah,
And then we
I can't
got,
make that, but,
nice.
but later, maybe later.
Can you make it? Oh, are you gonna be there, Mike?
No, I can't make it tomorrow for Nino, but
Then
yeah,
we have
if you want to.
I'll be there.
And then we got Click coming up on the 26th, and Frank will be with us for that one, I think, right, Frank?
Yeah.
And that's at 6 Central Time. So we got those 2 left, and I'm still waiting to hear from Dante right now. So that's what's going on. We're gonna have, we call him Yo. He'll be coming on. When is Yo coming on? Okay.
Yeah, he's coming.
April. Yeah, he's coming on
April 29th,
29th at
5.
5. Okay, so
All right.
that's what we have happening right now. Like I said, we're waiting for Dante to answer me, and then we'll go from there. But
Okay.
so we'll work on this audio. Thank you for that, and for all you can make it tomorrow. We'll see you then. Okay, guys.
Okay, hold on just a
Oh,
second.
hold on. And Frank, real quick, are you still selling your Tomo River paper and the notebooks?
It's almost gone. I still have some A5 size journals and the A7 small pocket ones. That's what we're down to.
Are you going to keep that in stock or
When
not?
it's gone, yeah. Well, that's it. That's all my supplier
Oh,
has
yeah.
left.
So after it's all sold out, you're gonna restock it?
Pads, A4 pads, A5
Done.
pads sold out. Yep, just down to journals and in both A5 size and an A7. Yep. Yep.
Hey,
New York Pen Show, Long Island Pen Show, New York Metropolitan Pen Show next weekend. Hospital.
I'd love to be there, but yeah. But I'll see you guys. I will see Mike. I'll see you, and I'll see you, Frank, in St. Louis. I booked my hotel, and I've already bought my tickets.
Sounds good.
So I should be there with my wife and with Matthew in St. Louis. I'll be in Raleigh and I'll be in DC.
Yep, good.
DC, I might come. DC.
how
I'd love to
about
see it.
Benjamin? Who you gonna watch him?
Benjamin, and for St. Louis, Benjamin will probably be staying with my mother-in-law. Yeah. So
Poor
it's one of those.
guy.
One of the things about for me for St. Louis, Dan, who was with us earlier, Dan and I get along well. We're pen pals. We've got a lot in common outside the pen community as well. I've never been able to see him in person, and that's one of the things I'm looking forward to. Mike, I see you all the time on Zoom calls. I like you a lot. I can't wait to meet you in person.
That'll be great. I'll be at Chicago too if you're going to make that one.
Yeah, I probably won't make Chicago though.
Okay,
Tony
all right.
Rostiki is another one that I'm looking forward to because I know Tony will be in St. Louis.
Yeah, I met him last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and he and I write back and forth, but I've never met him face to face. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to this year. Why I decided I'm going to be in St. Louis one way or another this year. I got the time. I got more vacation time. I know what to do with. Just book it. And my wife's not working summer school, so it makes it a little easier this time. So I decided that's it. I'm going to St. Louis. That's one of the things I enjoy about pen shows. And I wrote to somebody here recently. There's a newspaper article when I was on vacation in the North Carolina mountains. I picked up one of these local papers that they put out for tourists. And this woman wrote an op-ed column that just call me a pen fanatic. So great. I actually, when I got home, wrote her a letter, and she now has additions to her pen collection. So she's been more pen-abled, and she's been more into ballpoints over the years, but now she's got a roller ball, a ballpoint, and a fountain pen in a set kind of thing. And, hopefully she knows how to subscribe to my YouTube channel now. But one of the things I wrote to her is, if you're a pen fanatic, if you ever can, come visit a pen show. You're in North Carolina. The closest one to you is in Raleigh every June. And one of the things I look forward to is, for a lot of people, that's the big highlight of their social life. Is I don't do a lot of the pens after dark, usually because I've got my wife and my son with me. And that's a little hard to pull off sometimes for me. But I enjoy being able to meet people face to face. I've seen online and I bought from over the years, or maybe took a class from, where I can actually talk to them and meet them. Stan, I saw you. We never really got a chance to talk much, except to say hey. But hopefully the next time, if I get a chance to see you, we can actually talk more. I've been trying to convince the family to go down to Dallas. Spend some time down in Dallas, and if we do go down to Texas again, we're going to have to stay for more than just a pen show. We're going to have to see some old friends down in Fort Worth area. Matter of fact, Matthew was just begging us that on the way home from St. Louis, can we go down to Texas on the way home?
It's on the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He said it's on the map. It's only that far away. Yeah. If you want to drive another 15 hours or so. Yeah.
Just remember, Troy, everything goes through Atlanta. You got to go through Atlanta to get to Texas.
Actually, every time
at least all the airlines do it.
Yeah. Every time the last time I flew into Dallas, I had to go to Miami. And I won't do that again because Raleigh does have direct flights. But down to Miami, then over. And on the way back, I had to fly into Charlotte, and then from Charlotte over to Raleigh, which was bizarre to me. I was like, really? It's like a 10-minute flight. Zip down, we're in. But I had to wait because I actually the flight got bumped because I had to wait for the next flight, because by the time we got there, they were already gone. No, but seriously, I'm looking forward to coming back down to Texas again and spending some time down in Fort Worth with a couple of old farts on this call. So
I'll be in Dallas too.
You know what we should do is meet in Fort Worth, a lot of us, you know, like Mike.
Yep, I'll be
And,
down there for the Dallas show, so I'll definitely try to find you.
Yeah. Stan, anybody. Just had a
Yeah,
big old long table.
I'm gonna try
Yeah.
to make that one, Larry. I've been trying to get to the Dallas Pen Show for a couple of years, and it just seems like I've had, you know, either a storm or vehicle issues or, you know, something. But the vehicle issue's been lined out. I got me a new one. And so hopefully if we don't have any, you know, we're famous for getting storms late in the year down here, like August, September, you know. And so hopefully we won't have those. So hopefully I'll be able to see you outlaws at the Dallas Pen Show. And Troy, I hope to see you there too.
yeah, if I can ever make it down, I'll be.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm going to say adios until the next
guys.
barbecue time. Take care. Be safe.
Enjoy it, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.